lot of the correct moves in entrepreneurship are counterintuitive because all the intuitive ones you've already done.
So many agency owners, they wake up every day, client fires, and want to start some info thing. Do you think that that ever makes sense, really? Or like,
which one's info? Which one's the service business?
if you were to run an agency, what are your thoughts on the different ways?
With AI, this is where they'll be the first, one-person billion-dollar companies, 10-person billion-dollar companies, et cetera.
I think everyone knows who does cold outreach is it can be very brutal.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I just sat down with Alex Hormozi at his headquarters out in Las Vegas, and we talked about all kinds of different things, from client acquisition to scaling to $10 million a year and beyond, and the future of cold outreach, which I don't think I've ever heard him talk about before all in one stage. This video is an absolute masterclass. I'm going to be dropping a few more videos on this event on the channel, so feel free to hit subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get straight into it.
A little bit of background, my name's Matt, I'm 23, I dropped out of college, I've been running this business for 3 years now. It's a cold outreach agency.
Okay.
So people pay us primarily to send cold emails.
Okay.
So we're doing about 100 a month. It's niched in the sense that we work with B2B businesses doing $1 million a year or greater, but we work with a lot of different types of companies. So like staffing, private equity, mergers, acquisitions, all kinds of different companies. First question I had around was like industries that are most favorable for cold outreach.
It's about ticket size.
Yeah.
Yeah, so typically the larger the ticket, the more specific the target, the more cold outreach is important. The less specific the target, the lower the LTV, the more content and paid ads are the better channels.
Is there like a figure? Because
I like 10 grand or more as a rule of thumb.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
you want to be hunting whales, not hunting minnows with a harpoon. It's not, you could, it's just not efficient.
And I figure organic's good to bolt onto everything.
Everything.
Yeah. I heard you said before where it's like one channel, one audience.
Up to 1 million.
Up to 1 million. Do you think that you should always bolt on organic too, just to kind of give that like lubrication of the sales process?
Yeah, it's shifted from like, I still like the focus of the advice.
Yep.
I just feel like organic is so easy to do. So I consider organic to have two levers. So you have like MVP level of how do I have my minimum viable product of organic, which satisfies a different need than using organic as my primary method of acquisition. And so if I use it as like, I have to show that I'm alive and that I can provide value, then the purpose of the organic is lead nurture. So I'm doing outreach as my primary method, but then if you do outreach from a channel that has literally no posts, people will be like, this is a scam, and rightfully so. If you post 3 times a week and you have something that's relevant to your avatar and whatever you sell, then they will, what most people do, most sane people, some of the customers that you have, is that they will click your, if you do outbound, they'll click over to your profile before responding to your email. And they'll be like, what is this guy about? Or what is this gal about? And they'll be like, oh, this guy seems legit. They'll watch 2 or 3 things and they'll come in. And I'm sure if you have any kind of data tracking or any kind of surveys on the way in, they will say that. If you use it as the true, like I want to generate my demand almost entirely from organic, it's a different strategy. To me, it's a much different level of investment. And so at the base level, yes, one avatar, one channel, one offer. But I think that if you do outreach, it's like it's so low effort just for the MVP level. For the next level, that's a different monster. But just like having enough to show that you're alive, I'm pro.
Yeah, so like using it more so as like nurture rather than lead.
100%. And then the sales guys also, you're going to, I love knowing this because you will make some content that just does hit and then does create inquiries. And then that content is the stuff you give to the sales team as the greatest hits. And then the team should have a searchable database of what are the greatest hits for this type of avatar or this type of overcome, because typically people are going to either have questions around like, will this work for my type of business, which is where the case studies and avatars about specific case studies is useful, or they'll have objections that are kind of more standard sales objections that might be around your specific thing. And having sets of content that's both, which is like, does this work in this setting, or does this overcome the specific myth or belief that I have that's not true? Content around both those things then create sales assets that the guys can then use, or gals can use to go sell stuff.
Gotcha. So high level, if you're doing content as not your primary channel, you should still probably do it as like pulse. Nurture.
Yeah, have a pulse.
Cool. And should you do that like omni-channel? Like, is it fine if you're just
I think
like
one? And ideally the channel that you do outbound for. Now, if you do outbound on email, then it's just going to be like, you'll have your website and you'll have your one social profile, and that's what they're going to link to. Like whatever you link to is what they're going to click. So I would just link to the one thing that you're active on.
Okay.
Yeah, just to keep it minimum.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Another thing I want to cover, I know in $100 million leads, and in general, I think everyone knows who does cold outreach is it can be very brutal. It's like very labor intensive, very time intensive. It takes a lot of volume. Now with like AI, I feel like that's shifting, and we use a ton of AI stuff. It's very like you can automate a lot of the research and stuff. I think there's a lot of like worry, at least in the space that I'm in, or people get worried of like how things are going to change and what the future is going to look like. I guess, do you see any opportunities for like the general people that are just getting into this type of thing?
There's opportunity more now than ever before because the leverage of the opportunity has increased. And so if we define leverage as the difference between what you put in and what you put out, if you can get more out for what you put in, then you have higher leverage. And so with AI, this is where they'll be the first, one-person billion-dollar companies, 10-person billion-dollar companies, et cetera. And so people who have a more AI-enhanced business, which the business that you're in does have more of those levers, then yeah, they will get more for what they put in. Eventually, if they're like, well, no one will do it because AI can do everything. Well, if you take AI to the natural extreme on an AI can do anything that a human can do, then you can say that about literally everything. And so I don't think it's super productive. And so I reverse it to what will this knowledge change about my behavior? And so my perspective, or I take the position that since the dawn of time, it has been man plus tools against man plus tools. And right now we just have man plus better tools. And so nothing has really changed until the day it is man against machine and the machine wins. And so until we get to the day where we're going head to head against machines, it's still the same game it's always been, just more fierce.
At least a lot of people I know, they're like, who also run business like mine, they're like, should I get into ads or should I do something? Like, is this a dying thing? But let me
give you the obstacle overcome for that. Yeah. As long as human beings receive messages from other human beings, outreach will work.
Yeah.
So the core four, the way that I try to write the books to make sure that they're timeless is that I backdate them. Does the core four work in 2000 BC? You post, you could have a sign on the fucking street.
True. Yeah.
Right? You could shout on the corner. You could reach out to somebody. You could use a pigeon. It doesn't it's the same stuff. It's one-to-one, one-to-many, people you know, people you don't. Yeah. That's the core four. And so as long as humans will continue to act and behave like human beings, which is historically they have talked to each other, as long as we talk to each other, there will be a way to talk to another human and then solicit them to buy your shit.
That was what worried me about the model. I'm like, am I in the right? Like, I'm doing that. I just want to make sure.
Dude, everything is AI.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'll talk a little bit now about business, like model stuff about my thing. So right now, done for you, cold email. That's a service. Average ticket's about $5,000 a month.
Okay.
Our average
What's
customer.
churn?
Churn is, I don't know, 10, 15% a month.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I'd want it to be significantly lower.
Sure.
That I would say that's one thing. It's like, customers.
You can fix it with one really easy thing. It's gonna be avatar quality. It's just like you have to raise the standards on the avatar.
Yeah, that's the slow. I think you've talked about too, where it's like working your way up, where like you gotta sometimes you fight your battles, and that's helped a lot. All of our it's like headcount and churn for the customers that we work with. It's like very deeply correlated, and so that makes sense.
Would you inversely?
Like higher the headcount, lower the churn. Yeah, the bigger the companies, the more they stick. And I figure it's a lot of reasons. Model wise, I know there's a lot of agency owners out here. There's a lot of agency owners in general. There's a lot of ways to skin the cat of like, do you do pay per meeting? Do you do pay per appointment? Do you do rev share? Do you do retainer? Which is what we started like pay per meeting. Then we did. There was all kinds of issues. There's issues with everything. If you were to run an agency, would you, or if you run agencies, like what are your thoughts on the different ways? Because I know for like some agencies where it's more productized and it's less performance based, obviously those models make less sense where you're taking a piece of the upside. I think with this type of model, it could make sense, but we had issues with it where it's like, you don't get paid for attribution. Some people...
What do you want to have happen?
I want people to stick as long as possible. I want to maximize LTV.
Yeah.
That's the... Yeah.
And you want to maximize LTV so that you can maximize EV, enterprise value?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I will speak pretty definitively, which I rarely do, about like this model is better than that model. Agencies are exceptionally easy to get to, and caveat for the internet trolls of the world, right? Like exceptionally easy to get to $1 million, $3 million, even $10 million a year in almost any version of the model. Beyond that, it becomes exceptionally difficult because you have human capital. So it's more and more difficult to attract, talent to do higher level work. And typically the businesses that go from, 0 to 10 million, they're servicing SMBs and VSMBs. So very small business owners and small business owners. If you take one of the way that I like to think about any industry, if I want to get into, is I look at what the people who are the biggest in that industry are doing and think, okay, what's different about what they're doing versus what everyone else is doing? And the biggest agencies in the world service the Fortune 100. And so I take that as the natural extreme of like, what is the best version of this business? Is that you deal with businesses that always pay their bills, they never churn, they sign 5-year contracts at $5 million a year, and they're good for it. And so the process of agency scaling is very much scaling the avatar. And you basically have to just keep earning your way up, which you're already on the right track, of how can I get an avatar that actually can keep their word? And once you get to there, number one, and number two, you'll have a telltale sign of like, am I dealing with an avatar that's too low? If you want to start doing more of their business for them. And so if they're like, I can't close a door, right? Or like, you're like, maybe I'll do my sales for them. No. You have to deal with a business who knows how to sell, because your services are not, I will do acquisition for you. It is, I will do this more. I'll do
cold
lead
email, lead.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so it really comes down to who is the perfect avatar for only this very narrow service that I have tremendous margins on. And so that's where we get really clear on like, well, if they actually, like I've been selling people who have over 10 people headcount, but if I have over 50, my churn is like 1%.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I really should just build that and not have all of this. Now, what happens is we always incur debt. So it's not like there's something wrong. Every business incurs debt when you start, 100%. You either incur talent debt, tech debt, financial debt, you incur debt. You want to incur the debt that's the easiest to pay back, right? And so right now, and you can also incur reputational debt, like there's debt. You're selling some people that you know you shouldn't sell so you can pay the bills. Fine, I'm not going to get on an ethical, whatever with you. But the sooner you can draw the line of saying, I want to, like if you told your team, how many sales a month do you do, sales velocity?
3, 4.
Okay.
Some.
I'm okay with us going to 1 deal a month. And where this gets more interesting is that when you get that truly correct avatar, the price elasticity changes. And so all of a sudden it's like, if I actually were to price to my correct avatar, I might be able to charge 2 times as much. And by charging 2 times as much, I might 5x my profit. And by doing that, I'm actually more than happy to have my quote revenue growth rate be slower than what it was before when I had these people. But the amount of operational drag that you incur, also like team morale of like, I just onboard this guy and he's already turned out, like it just feels like such a pain. Whereas if they know that they're going to be creating long-term relationships with the customers, you will get a stickier business that's more fun to run and way more profitable. So part of this is like a lot of the correct moves in entrepreneurship are counterintuitive because all the intuitive ones you've already done. You do those naturally. You don't think about it because all the things that are intuitive, you already did it and they already worked. Where you get stuck is the counterintuitive solutions, or the ones where you're like, wait, so for me to grow, I need to sell fewer people and have higher qualifications. It's hard to do. That's why most people don't do it. It's also why most people don't make money.
That makes sense. So it's the way to kind of continue to grow this business, or like the way to, so we're pacing whatever 1 million a year to get this to a 10 million a year thing. It's less of like, oh, I need to go from this model, this price point to this price point. It's like, continue to raise prices, continue to work with bigger avatars, continue to generate bigger results. Don't be the business. Like you're speaking the language of like, I've been there, done that. Okay. Another thing, I know this ties in this point, and I feel like I already like half know the answer. Is like, so many agency owners know they're like, oh man, they wake up every day, client fires everything, and they're like, they want to start some info thing. You're just talking about the Mr. Panda example where it's like, you don't teach people to sell chicken, sell the chicken. Do you think that ever makes sense really, or like, no?
Depends on your goals. Which one's info? Which one's the service business?
Left is info, right? Service.
Right. I even to say anything else. You already know.
Yeah.
Right. And so the difficulty with the quote information education world is that it's one of the easiest businesses to make some money on. It is one of the hardest to make a tremendous amount of money on.
What do you think that like ballpark numbers, just so everyone knows, like when you say like some amount of money, are we talking like?
I mean, let's look at like, there's a handful of $30 million a year businesses, in the quote information space. There's tons in the 1 to 3. Tons and tons and tons. Because that's about, like, if you just reverse engineer price points, it's so I like to reverse things to to the human capacity, because that's a constant. And so some of you guys are familiar with Dunbar's number. Between 120 and 150 is the amount of people that someone can like kind of manage in their heads, right? And so businesses will typically cap with no systems, which are the vast majority of businesses don't actually have systems. They say they have systems, but they don't. Caps around 150 people to manage. And so most of those businesses, if you reverse engineer price point, for any kind of information plus services, gets you somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 million, maybe $5 million a year, and then they kind of cap around there. Now, the difficulty is that if someone is good enough, okay, here's my analogy. So let's say that I have the best tasting milk in the world. All right, that sounds weird. I have the best. Let's say I have the best coffee. Thank you. I have the best tasting coffee in the world. Okay. Actually, coffee is a bad analogy for this one. So let's go back to milk. So I have the best tasting milk in the world. Okay. If I give you two options, option one is I can take this full glass of milk, which is what you're used to paying for, and I say, I'm going to pour shot glasses of the best milk in the world, and you can have a shot of that milk. Or I can take this milk and pour it into the same size glasses, same number, but I'm going to fill the rest up with water. Which would you rather have? The full amount, but more diluted milk, or a shot glass of the right kind? Which one would you rather have? Shot glass. That in and of itself is why the quote coaching business does not scale. So the idea that somebody will, if what you do is so special and so valuable that you can teach someone how to do it in a weekend and be a coach for you, how valuable is it? Now, it might be valuable, but the likelihood that you can actually teach someone to be good in a weekend is low. And so the only quote coaching models that I have seen scale are one of two permutations. Permutation one is you take people from the audience that have been you for a very long time and you give them away where they're getting a significant rev share. I'm not talking 10%, I'm talking they make half or more of the revenue, where it makes more sense for them to continue working with you because you generate deal flow for them to grow their own business underneath of your umbrella. That's option one. Option two is you run a large event style business. You look at Tony Robbins, you look at, whatever, like there's a handful, and there's not many. And that's the Tony Robbins version of that, in my opinion, is best milk in the world, shot glass. You're getting, you have smaller volume of that access or that interaction, but it's so good, you're still willing to pay for it. Now, how well does Tony Robbins coaching do it? And I love Tony. I'm a big, he's an awesome guy. But I think most people, I would bet, I don't know the stats on this, I would bet that the NPS scores and the customer satisfaction scores of people going to an event with Tony for 5 days is higher than people spending 5 days with his coaching staff. That would be my bet. And so that's because you got a full dose of diluted milk, or would you rather have the shot of the best stuff? And so most of those businesses do cap because so the cap ends up being, you can still scale it, but the milk has to be so fucking good that you actually have to be able to be diluted, the volume of what they get is still good at a tiny, tiny amount of access. Most people aren't that good. And so instead, they cap at 1 to 3 million-ish. Sometimes they sell something that's super expensive because the space they're in. They're selling something related to, the real estate tends to have higher things. Anything investment related tends to have higher LTVs, things like that. And then those people can get to maybe 10, 20-ish. But then again, it becomes difficult. ROAS continues to drop. Margins continue to compress as you try to go to colder and colder audiences. And then you end up in one of these machines where I have to keep selling people in order to pay my bills. And then all of a sudden you have a $20 million a year nonprofit and you hate your life.
So stick with services.
It just depends on what you want. If you're like, I want to make a few $1 million a year, you absolutely, it is one of the fastest ways of making a few $1 million a year.
But if contextualizing to myself, I feel like I've kind of jumped a lot of that hurdle. If I'm already doing this run rate,
I think you're doing great, man. Yeah, stick with what you're doing.
Cool.
I'll spell this out though. I want to be clear. I don't think there's a problem with it, at all. I'm just saying that it depends on what we're solving for. If you're like, I want to build a $1 billion company, it's probably not going to be in information. It's probably not. If you wanted to have, and you probably won't even have an exit because it's so key man driven. But some people don't want to, a friend of mine, PC, he was at the launch. He I think it was 11 years or 12 years. He lived on $70,000 a year for him and his wife. And then he sold for $250 million. Some people don't want to live on $70,000 a year for all of their 20s and their 30s and then make 250. Some people would prefer to make a few $1,000,000 a year for their 20s and their 30s and not have the exit. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just when people try to have both where it becomes a problem. And so people are just unwilling to make trades. And I just see that as just a human problem, not like a, this versus that problem. Like I want everything. Okay, cool. So does everyone. But like it doesn't tend to work that way. I want to have a super profitable business that grows really fast and also has tons of enterprise value. Pick two.
Awesome. Well, I think time's up. Just want to say thank you to my audience for helping with this. And love all you guys. Appreciate this. This was amazing.
Oh, thank you, man.